Well, good morning, everyone. It's so nice to see faces, old and new, here in our sanctuary this morning. And greetings also to everyone who's watching us remotely. This is a welcoming religious community, spiritually led by the Reverend Krista Taves. My name is Reverend Dr. Claudia Hall, and I serve here in many different roles, including I've been the RE coordinator for the last year. I've done consulting ministry here. Also, I'm a parent advocate at Cardinal Glennon Children's Medical Center, and I'm just always thrilled to get to be here, especially on a day when it is so cold outside and it is so warm inside. It is lovely to be inside and not meeting outside for sure. We welcome everyone here to this home of comfort, spirit, justice, and hope. We are Unitarian Universalists. An important ritual in our Unitarian Universalist faith is the lighting of our chalice. There are a lot of different interpretations for this, as there is pretty much everything in Unitarian Universalism. We like to have options when it comes to our theology. But some of the things that really appeal are that it is the light of reason, that it is the warmth of community, and that it is the flame of hope. I invite you to join me in celebrating all of these and more as you join with us on this. The words will be on the screen, but also if you have a candle or a chalice at home, now would be the time to light it as we say our unison words projected on the screen. We hallow this time together by kindling the lamp of our heritage. I invite you, as you are willing and able, to join with me in a spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of spring, we gather today to seek for purpose in the chaos of our lives. We want to see beneath the turbulent tides to the deeper rhythms that undergird all existence. Just as seasons turn and turn again, just as the earth renews and restores, may we too root ourselves deeply in hope, that we may stand strong in the face of anguish, that we may be flexible enough to bend so we do not break. Like the great redwoods, may we learn to hold one another's hands through thick and thin, for it is in community that we find strength far beyond our own. Amen, and blessed be. I invite you to remain seated and join with us in our hymn on the great hymnal projected on the wall. It's number 38, Morning Has Broken. It is a tradition here at the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Alton to place each service within the larger sources and traditions that we hold dear. We are a religion with no requirement of creed or belief, but we do have things that we support overall. And our service today comes from our seventh principle. It's currently our seventh principle, the interdependent web of all existence. For as long as there has been life on this planet, especially among the human world, we have looked to nature for guidance and a sense of meaning. Our earth-based practices remind us continually that everything in life comes and goes in cycles, and that whatever it is you are going through, this too shall pass. I invite the children this morning, or the young at heart, to come join me down here at the front. We're going to be reading a book. It's called Drop, An Adventure Through the Water Cycle by Emily Kate Moon. Readier than me this morning. Ooh, there we go. All right, good morning. Anybody else want to come join? We have a cool new book. This is water. Hi, I'm Drop. Drop lives here on planet Earth. She has been here for 4,500,000,000 years. I'm 4.5 billion. Drop has seen a thing or two. Oh, hello there, dinosaurs. She has lounged in every lake, luxury, and soaked in every sea. So many things to see, get it? Drop spends most of her time in the ocean. She rides the wild waves, woo, and drifts on the gentle currents. So sweet. She sunbathes on the surface of the sea. Ah, this is the life. The sun fills Drop with energy. She gets all warm and wiggly, and then she pops off the surface of the water. Oh, bouncy, 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 poof! And floats into the air. Here I go! Invisible, Drop bounces around the air for days. Abracadabra! Poof! When she gets colder and less bouncy, she reappears from teeny tiny droplets. Ta-da! And her friends show up too. Hello! Drop and her friends like to get together and hang out. Bonding time! When a lot of them get together, they make clouds. Clouds are cool. A crowded cloud can become quite an event. Drop and her friends bounce around so much that they create sparks. Zap, zip, zoop, eek! Their clouds turn electric, downright shocking. It can get loud and dark, but Drop hangs in there. We've got this. She knows it will all be worth it, because that is when Drop gets to be rain. Whee! Drop has been every kind of rain there is. Sprinkling, sprinkalicious, drizzling, drippity drip, and pouring, splishy sploosh. She has been hail and snow too. Time for a snow day! Drop loves the adventure of it. Ice ball! She never knows where she'll fall. If she makes it to a mountain, she might slip into a stream, trickle, trickle, or dive off a cliff. I'm Super Drop! She might roll down a river, yes, and land in a lake. Hi, new home! If she freezes into snow or ice, she might even be stuck somewhere for thousands of years. Drop has been glaciers. Are we there yet? And icebergs. I guess I gotta be cool with this for a long, long time. If she falls in a forest, she might trickle down a tree and soak into the soil. Hi, tree! She could sink down to the bedrock and take a nap with the groundwater. But then she gets pulled in by roots. I'm going to get back to my roots. Sucked up through stems, up, 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 and pushed out through a leaf. Whoa, what a ride! Everywhere she flows, Drop keeps things moving. She moves through plants and animals. I'm so busy! She goes from flower nectar to bees and butterflies. She fills fruit with juice for birds and bears. And you know what else? You. Every time you eat or drink, Drop gets to flow into you. And that is when a whole new adventure begins. Yay! Speaking of adventures, it's time to sing you all out for children's time. As you As part of our weekly worship service, we take time to express our joys, concerns, and sorrows. This is one more way that we continue to build and rebuild this beloved community, to take this ritual and infuse it with the 190 years of this church's existence. If you would like to recognize a joy or sorrow or milestone in your life, we invite folks to go down this aisle and across, and then to come up and take as many stones as you need and place them in the water. If you are at home today or watching us online, you can certainly carry a stone with you as well, a symbol of what you have in your heart. I invite you to join us for our musical reflection and then to come forward as you need. Our next hymn is number 63, Spring Has Now Unwrapped the Flowers. It'll also be projected here on the wall for you. I think I was being more hopeful on that particular hymn than real at this point. That's right. We're all ready. We're all ready for spring. All right. So good morning, everybody. I gave Mary such an ambitious title when I was thinking about this sermon, Finding Purpose in Chaos. But the idea of finding purpose in the chaos has very much come home to roost with us this week, because we've all been sick with various things, and we've had car issues, and then my cat got sick. And so all of these things combined have turned my sort of feeble attempt at order in my house into a house that really looks more like a preschool exploded in it. I was planning, I had these great ambitious goals for this sermon, I really did. I was planning on pulling a Marie Kondo. Are any of you familiar with her? Okay, so I was going to do this on our spiritual lives this week. For those of you who might not be familiar with the name, Marie Kondo is an internet design guru who uses principles of Japanese culture to help people declutter, simplify their lives, and focus on what brings them joy. Her technique, called KonMari, it's a lovely technique, and it really does kind of encourage you to think about the things you own not simply as utility items, but to think about them in terms of, do they bring you joy? It is a way to look at life and say, what is it that brings me joy? What is it that encourages my soul versus what am I afraid I might have to use again? This approach, although I'm simplifying, obviously, but it can be wonderfully liberating. Japanese culture as a whole emphasizes simplicity and harmony and the idea of everything being impermanent. You would expect this from a culture so deeply influenced by the religious aspects of Shinto, the natural world, and Buddhism, with its emphasis on the endless change of all things. However, I was slightly encouraged this week when I read an article where even the ultra-tidy Marie Kondo is saying that she has basically having to give it up. She has given up on being tidy while her children are little. That was a relief to me as a parent of an almost 4-year-old. I was like, oh, okay, if she can't keep her house clean, I stand no chance whatsoever. But it still left me, after reading that article, with the need to figure out what I was going to preach about today. And what I got thinking about was the book of Kohelet. Now, you probably know it more by its English name, Ecclesiastes. This book is in the Hebrew Bible, and it is either the most profound things you've ever read or the most depressing. or both, depending on sort of your viewpoint and where you're meeting this text. I encourage you, if you get a chance to read it. Now, what I will say is all translations have their biases. I personally love to use the web app Sefaria, Sefaria. What it is a Jewish app, and they've got the Jewish translation of the Hebrew Scriptures on there. So it's much less biased than maybe some of the other things that you would see. Regardless, that's my plug for Sefaria. But this little book, it's very short. It's 13 chapters, and most of them are lots of like little one-liners. They're sort of bumper sticker phrases that you might expect to see on things. Little nuggets of wisdom that were collected and passed on. Now, I'm not assuming all of you have had multiple classes on the Hebrew Bible, so let's give a little context here. First of all, this book is really interesting because the writer is very critical of Israelite religion. They actually doubt, does God exist? Is God good? Does God care? And all the things they were taught, they wonder if any of it has value or if it's just futile, like trying to catch the wind. That is one of the writer's favorite phrases. There's a Jewish story that goes like this. It says that a very young and infatuated King Solomon wrote the Song of Songs, often called the Song of Solomon, which I will side note here is a very naughty book. It is not something you expect to find in Scripture, okay? Then in midlife, he wrote Proverbs with all of its witty quotes about how to live a good life and how to find wisdom and how to succeed at all the things. And then an old and bitter King Solomon wrote Kohelet as he reflected on his life and whether or not it had meaning. I don't think that this story is literally true, but I do think that these three books of the Bible represent times in our lives for which many of us, they come at different ages, and sometimes it's at different times in our life based on what goes on. To start, the Song of Songs, because really these three books go together in a certain mindset. The Song of Songs is a super naughty little erotica book. It is designed to get a couple in the mood at their wedding. My Hebrew teacher used to get a lot of mileage out of this book with our class because he would set us to translating chunks of it and figuring out what the euphemisms were, and then we would all argue about our interpretation in class. I think he kind of understood what young 20-somethings want to do with the scripture passage. But next to that, then you've got Proverbs, which is super well quoted. Almost everybody has heard Proverbs 30, who is a woman of valor? She is worth more than rubies, yada, yada. And all kinds of good little witty quotes are in there. Ecclesiastes, though, gets a lot less of the treatment that we would expect from a religious book because it does have so much just angst in it. But I think that it's really important for us to listen to this book because it reminds us that on the one hand, all we can do is live the best we can, right? We can only do so much. And on the other hand, no matter what we do, we are not fully in control of how actions play out in the world. That is a truth that is at once a bitter pill to swallow because a lot of us want to control, we want to fix it, we want to make it better. But at the same time, it's also really uplifting because sometimes you have done everything you can and it still goes to heck. And that's just life. This writer has seen things, as the mem says. He has been through things, and he's kind of gone beyond anger to despair at the fact that, quote, there is nothing new under the sun. Another of the ones that you may have heard before, the writer goes, I have further observed under the sun that the race is not won by the swift, nor the battle by the valiant. Bread is not won by the wise, nor wealth by the intelligent, nor favor by the learned. The time of mischance comes to all. This is not really a happy book, but I can say that I have been in this place. He calls God out. And you have to remember that in ancient Israel, speaking against God was punishable by death. So for a writer to put this down on parchment and for the Jewish community to say this is important enough for us to preserve it is a really interesting check on that sort of fundamentalist religion that they had. I have been there. I think most of us have been here, right? Watch the news for 5 seconds and you're just like, what in the heck? Why is there no justice? Why are the bad guys getting ahead and the rich getting richer and the people who are doing the things and living the life and working out and doing everything they can't get anywhere? Why is it that women who still get paid less than men are now being forced to give up even more and more and more of their rights? Why is it that all of these mean girls and bad boys are getting ahead while the rest of us who are trying to be a decent human being seem to suffer? The truth is, I can't answer that question. Kohelet can't either. But in the writer's day, the theology was very simple. God blessed those who honored him, and he was always a he back then. And so anyone who was poor or sick or troubled or who died young had somehow incurred God's anger. To be honest, that is still the theology that is taught in an awful lot of churches, right? God will prosper you and bless you, give you miracles and abundance. Well, Kohelet says, that doesn't work. That's not actually the way it goes for a lot of people. The megachurch prosperity gospel that says those who are good enough will be blessed. So if you have millions of dollars, you must be a good enough person. You must be blessed. You must be worth it. But if you don't have enough, you need to do more for the church and give us more money so that then we have millions and we're blessed. The theology is a tidy little system here. Keeps people rich and others oppressed. But even when this thinking was literally the law of the land, the writer of this book contradicts it and says, "For although I am aware that it is said, it will be well with those who revere God, and it will not be well with the scoundrel, here is a frustration that occurs to me. Sometimes an upright person is requited according to the conduct of the scoundrel, and sometimes the scoundrel is requited because of the conduct of the upright. I say that is nothing but frustration." There is something comforting about the fact that we are not the first people who are facing this. We are not the people who only have it one way or another. We can see those tensions and those contradictions. In many ways, modern Judaism is based on the internal contradictions between the religion of Proverbs that says, if you do good and you keep the commandments and you work hard, you'll prosper, and the theology of Kohelet that says, you might do all the things right and still get knocked down. This is really interesting when you consider that in the Jewish tradition, they're said to have been written by the same person. So it's not just that there are different factions in the religion, but that even within our own hearts and minds, we too can struggle with these contradictions. The rest of the time, Ecclesiastes says, the bad guys get ahead and the good die young. So what is the point? This asking what is the point of doing all the things, is perhaps the purpose of religion as a whole. Every religion wrestles with this. It's called theodicy, the problem of evil. Why, if there is good, whether it be a universe or a God or whatever, do so many awful things happen? Is there a God or Ma'at or something like karma that impartially judges our actions? Is it that all of our rewards get pushed off into a future afterlife where maybe we will get what we deserve? Or is it just a nihilistic free-for-all where we should just grab whatever we can because only today matters? Most religions bounce back and forth between this because we have our ideals and the things that we hold up and the things that we wish were the world we would like it to be. And then we also have the world the way it is, which is messy and complicated and where people don't always get what they deserve for good or ill. In Buddhism, in Judaism, and in most of the earth-based religions that I've been a part of, there's this idea that you have to be both in the moment but also aware of the cycles. It is really extremely hard to be both in the moment and mindful of what is happening in your life at this time, but also to have the need to continue to make the world a little bit better for the people who come after you. Simply living for the now is not enough. That is the thinking that has caused colonialism, climate change, the rise of the industries that have poisoned the world we live in. Even so many of our global problems today, if you look at the history, what happened is that when the Western empires, the Spanish Empire and the French and the British, when those broke up, the leaders of those countries said, we want peace in our time. So what they did was both abhorrent and brilliant at the same time. They took peoples who had been enemies for millennia and they put them in the same place. So instead of saying all of the Muslim provinces will be one country and all of the Hindu provinces will be another, they deliberately put them next to each other and mushed them together so that you have the tensions that you're seeing in India and Pakistan today. They took the Jewish people who had been living in the Palestine, and they took the Arab people and the Druze and the Muslims, and they mushed them all into one protectorate, and they've been fighting each other ever since. You look at a lot of the conflict in Africa, and it's the same thing. Tribal groups who had historic hatreds for one another were put together in these totally what do I want to say? They're just these totally made up borders, right? And they're busy killing each other, so they weren't conquering or going after the empires that had done them harm. So yes, at the moment, those leaders of those empires got peace for them and their grandchildren, but it also sowed discord worldwide that we are still dealing with, putting millions, even billions of people in terrible situations so that a few could have an advantage. So I'd like to say, well, just don't worry about today and live for the future. Make the future a better place. But the problem with that is that you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. My dad was one of these people that saved and scrimped and worked hard and tried to put away a little bit and tried to work for the future, and he was ready to retire. He was 2 years before he could retire when he died of a heart attack. Never getting to enjoy the fruit of his labors, never getting a chance to go on vacation or have even a weekend away with his family. So what is the solution? We have two very opposite poles of life, right? The live for now, be in the moment, and the need to plan for the future to make the world better, to increase and value those who come after us. How can we reconcile those two things when it seems like everything is in so much flux? I say that the writer of Ecclesiastes and the Buddha came to fundamentally similar answers. You have to understand that nothing is forever. You have to put plans in place, but then enjoy what you have. You can't focus only on tomorrow because you might not get there, but you can't only live in the now because you actually might get to tomorrow. Earth-based teachings add to this by saying everything is connected. The small ripples that we make in our lifetime can and do become forces that echo long after we are gone, although there will never be a static perfection. The book that I read for the children this morning is really important because every drop of water that is on this planet has been here for 4.5 billion years, maybe even longer, they're discovering. Those water drops have been here and they've done things. But individually, they're not much, right? One drop of rain doesn't do anything. But as everybody who helped clean up the basement here knows, you get enough drops of water together and there's some massive changes that happen. The teaching from this is to say that everything comes in cycles, and sometimes these cycles are way, way longer than we can even envision. For thousands of years, slavery was so normal that it was not even questioned. It was assumed. When you read the scriptures of basically every religion on the planet that's been around for a while, they all talk about slavery as though it is just part of how we are as human beings. But eventually, enough people added their little bits in here and there and changed the balance. So now it is not the norm. Now it is considered to be evil by the vast majority of societies. But yet, people are still enslaved. There's probably about 50 million people in this world that are in some kind of slavery conditions. So the world is better for most, but it's not better for all. There's a famous problem in mathematics. Now, I'm not a mathematician, so you have to walk with me on this one. I'm taking theology out of math, not math out of theology. There's a very famous problem in mathematics. It's called squaring the circle. What it says is that there is no way to make a square from a circle and have it have the same area. Mathematicians have been working on this problem since antiquity, literally hundreds of years before the Common Era. The Indian, Chinese, and Greek philosophers started working on this. And it is completely and totally impossible to do, even with computer help. You cannot square a circle. To me, this is a theological problem. No matter how many steps we take toward a perfect world, there will always be a gap. 200 years ago, when Unitarians and Universalists really started getting going here in the States in the late 1700s and 1800s, they were inclusive of so many things that others weren't, right? But at the same time, they weren't necessarily open to African Americans. They weren't necessarily open to women in the pulpit. Some were, which is pretty amazing for the 1800s, okay? But having a queer minister? No, it was not anywhere close to being on their radar, okay? So what happened is they squared the circle a little bit, but then there were gaps. And then they moved it a little bit, and there are gaps. And now today we move it more, and we see gaps. We see that in, the Black Lives Movement with UUs and how, historically speaking, our churches have been pretty monochrome in our color scheme. Okay, so now we're pushing that out. And once we get past that point, and we truly do have a multicultural community that we want, we'll find other gaps, because we can never quite get there. But that doesn't mean that we get to just say, oh, well, it's good enough. We get to keep pushing the boundary and keep expanding the circle. Some people despair. They want, especially in the West, we've been given this idea of a static perfection, that heaven is out there and it is perfect and it will never change, and that's the way it is. Perfection in different religious traditions means something different than it does in the West. The idea of perfection is that we keep going towards it. We may never achieve Buddhahood, but we should in each lifetime progress farther down the path. That is different from a Western mindset, and we have to rewire our brains out of this Western mindset that says one day we'll get there and we'll arrive and it'll be perfect. Because the truth is, you can't square the circle. We'll always be pushing it a little farther and including more and more and more, but we'll always have more to do. We can and should do what we are able, as we are able, to make the world better and to enjoy what life has given us. One of the things that I have seen in more people than I can count is I see amazing people who want to work for social justice. They get out there, they're on the front lines, they're doing the work, and they burn out and they crash and they leave because they don't stop to celebrate the joys that they have. And it's hard. It is hard to dance at a funeral. Right now, at least in the Missouri side of the river here, folks, it feels like a funeral. It feels like all of the rights that have been fought for so many years to open up for pregnant people, to open up for women and men and other gendered folks, to open up for all kinds of lives to be welcomed. It really does feel like we're seeing a funeral of civil rights. And how do you dance at a funeral? Kohelet says basically that you have to, because today is the day we have. And it's learning to balance that is this incredible dance. And no matter how good we get at it, there will still be more lessons that we need. But we can see in nature that even when the weather is brutal, even when things are awful, the dandelions are coming out. The resilience of weeds, I think, is something that is a theological treasure for us as Unitarian Universalists. We are the weeds of most religions, folks. We are not the ones that fit in their pretty little gardens. We are not the people who stand and look just like everybody else. We are not the people that everybody looks at and goes, oh, they've obviously done so well for themselves. We are the people who get stomped on. We are the people that get rooted out of our families of origin and our backgrounds and our workplaces. We are the people who look weird. We have crinkly leaves and odd-shaped flowers. We are not pretty. We do not get picked and put in bouquets usually. But by golly, we are resilient. You knock us down and we stand back up. You crush us underfoot and we come up. You spray us with Roundup and we're going to keep coming back. Dandelions are a metaphor for so many things, but you know what else a dandelion is that most people don't realize? They're incredible. They're one of the greatest sources of pollen and nectar for birds and butterflies. Dandelions are edible, the entire thing. They can provide food for animals, for humans, for birds, for bees, for invertebrates, for everything. They are resilient. They help hold soil in place in ways that these pretty little plants you buy at the stores don't. They have a spreading root system that helps to integrate all the different levels of the soil together. They can grow anywhere. Gravel driveway, doesn't matter. Clay soil, totally fine.